Nano Machine by Hanjo Leolia. Chapter 423. Nano Machine Advent. Part 1. The faces of the demonic cult's warriors who were waiting for Chen Yuan to respond were stiff and calm. The most important thing for them was the safety of their lord. However, while they stood guard, they saw that the warriors of Yulin and the palace warriors of the North Sea Ice Palace were heading down to the underground. The fear that their lord, who defeated the dragon, would end up losing the core of the dragon turtle, pissed them off. Damn bastards. It is true that there is no sage in front of the treasure. It was just like that. The dragon turtle, which brought disaster when alive, turned into a treasure that everyone coveted once it died. To the extent that the whisperings of eternal life and the regeneration of the body turned every faithful man into a greedy bastard. Lord, please get up. Everyone wanted Chen Yuan to recover quickly. They wanted him to show his anger to those who revealed their true colors. At this time, impatience was spreading. Crackle. Oh? The sparks which were on Chen Yuan's body suddenly began to shine a lot brighter. The cultists standing around the Lord immediately moved back a couple of steps as they didn't want sparks to fall on them. The lightning is becoming stronger. The faces of the 6 swords who were watching it darkened. However, Chen Yuan, who was supposed to control the qi, seemed to be having trouble. But it was a concern for only a moment. Weak. The lightning and sparks extending out in the shape of a circle were absorbed into Chen Yuan's body. A strong energy emanated from Chen Yuan's body, which hadn't been giving out any energy except for the lightning qi. Ah! Finally! Lord! As expected, Chen Yuan succeeded in subduing the lightning qi. As the new energy got absorbed, which was in the middle of his dantian, a true coexistence of energies existed in his body. But it's out of balance. Compared to the demonic energy and the qilance flame, the lightning qi seemed insufficient. He absorbed the qi emitted by the dragon, so it temporarily increased, but in order to balance out the lightning with the other energies, a constant formation and balance of lightning qi was needed. And that source was: I need to have that core. The novelties of the other 3 attributes naturally replenished when Chen Yuan consumed them. Unlike the lightning qi, the other energies would restore when used. In the same way, it seemed like he could only balance out the true spirit of the 4 energies in his body with the core of the dragon, which is known to have infinite energy. When he opened his eyes, the cultists who had been waiting for Chen Yuan shouted, "Wah! Lord has woken up." Hu Bong hurriedly ran with the robe in his hands, trying to cover Chen Yuan. Seeing that, Chen Yuan realized that his clothes got burned out. Chen Yuan, who covered his naked body with the long robe, asked, "What happened?" Hu Bong. Chen Yuan sensed that many of the people who stayed on the ground disappeared. Except for more than 300 white-haired people of the North Sea Ice Palace, who watched from a distance, and the cultists, no one could be seen. Lord! Just a while ago, the men of Yulin and the North Sea Ice Palace went down to get the core of the dragon. Chen Yuan shook his head at the words of Hu Bong. He expected people to covet it, but he didn't like how they actually went. And them? Not all the warriors of Ice Palace had gone down. Looking at the ones in the distance, it seemed like those warriors were keeping an eye on the demonic cult rather than trying to fight. It was Mara Kim who gave the answer. Lord. They are warriors and officials directly under the control of the Ice Palace's king. Officials? I can answer that. At that time, Baek Hyun, who was outside the defense circle, approached Chen Yuan. It seemed like he had been waiting for a while to explain it. Lord, those people. The remaining royal officials of the Ice Palace were the followers of the deceased former king. They didn't support Dan Jushin, the deputy king, who was currently in power. The corners of Chen Yuan's lips went up. Nice. Huh? Those who have to be dealt with and those who are on our side are separated. Baekhyun's face turned pale at the words of Chen Yoan. It sounded casual, but he couldn't overlook it. He didn't know about the clans of Jianghu, but Chen Yoan, the lord of the demonic cult, was someone who kept his word. We need to hurry. I'll bring you some clothes. No. You don't need to. When they tried to summon the cultists to replace Chen Yoan's clothes, he refused. After all, there was something he had to test. It was one of the 3 features he had been most curious about. Nano. Gadolinium nanosuit. Equipping gadolinium nanosuit. SSSSSS. Numerous black particles came out of Chen Yoan's body and covered it. The black particles that came out were agglomerated and covered the entire body of Chen Yoan, creating an ultra-thin, black armor. Wing. Even his entire face had been covered, leaving only 2 holes for the eyes. Nanosuit has been equipped. Whoa. Nano's augmented reality opened up in Chen Yoan's vision. All the preparations were completed as white particles drew lines and marked up information. At the tremendous change that happened, all the cultists were shocked. A armor has been made. Lord, what is this? Gadolinium nanosuit formed without gaps, making him look like a non-human. In the same way, his appearance looked more like a real demon. The word of demon god kept flowing out from everyone's mouth. It's a lot more conspicuous than I thought. He thought that there would be subtle changes, but seeing the reactions of everyone around, it seemed a lot more extravagant. Chen Yoan briefly explained while looking at the 6 swords, Mara Kim and Elder Mong Mu. It's nano armor. Whoa. With those words, Chen Yoan's body floated into the air. While light magnetic field particles spewed out from the 2 feet of the nanosuit. Using the magnetic field force of both hands, it is possible to change the direction and balance. The suit's hands were also emitting some magnetic field particles. As he floated into the air, everyone was nothing short of amazed. Chen Yoan flew away after saying 2 words to them. Follow me. Phut. Swoosh. Chen Yoan's body wearing the nanosuit flew through the air in an instant and then disappeared to the underground, which got pierced by the sky flash. The cultists, who were amazed at what their lord was doing, shouted. Whoa! Hu Bong, who looked at Chen Yoan fly away, spoke 1 word. Nano armor. It made his heart skip a beat. Jigul Sohee wasn't the only one who was flustered when the face behind the nanosuit was revealed. Moyong Kong was equally shocked at Chen Yoan's appearance. What the hell was the armor on his body? And it was astonishing for him to see Chen Yoan recover from chi deviation in such a short time. This? Dan Jushin, the deputy king of the palace, was also perplexed. Before the lord of demonic cult recovered, he wanted to absorb the core and explode his internal strength, so he didn't expect the man to appear so quickly. How did he recover so quickly after being attacked by the dragon? It wasn't that the internal energy had been exhausted, but his body had taken too much lightning chi, and to recover from that, despite being a divine master level, it would take a long time. They all thought that it would take half a day or so, but this was too fast. Lord Chen, I am glad to see you are safe. Moyong Kong, who was confused and not sure what to do, spoke cautiously. If Chen Yoan had appeared, then there is nothing good that would come from fighting him. At that, Chen Yoan turned towards him and opened his mouth. Quite refreshing, how people who covet other people's belongings were worried for me. Kook. Moyong Kong became quiet at those words. It was because he didn't know how Chen Yoan would react if he said anything else. However, the North Sea Ice Palace didn't stand still. What do you mean by other people's belongings? Although Lord Chen did the most work, strictly speaking everyone joined together to fight the dragon, it doesn't belong to just one person. Among the elders of Ice Palace, the warlike one, Mubong, spoke out. Mubong too had rushed down to where the dragon was to covet the core and gain strength for himself and himself alone. Seol Young Gwi, too, came out to help out. What the elder said is right. And Lord Chun, while you were recovering above, we only came here to confirm the death of the dragon. Please clear this misunderstanding that you have. Seol Young Gwi made up excuses. So far, they haven't been able to directly occupy the core of the dragon turtle. He thought that no matter how great of a lord he was, he couldn't do anything if they hadn't occupied it yet. Good job, Elder. Dan Jushin, the deputy king, praised Seol Young Gwi for his quick words. He, too, didn't want to confront the monster who just restored his strength. A pity, but since Elder Seol had to make up a justification for this, I think we should only deal with the ones from the Blade God 6 martial clan, and discuss the core at a later time. Nothing good ever came out from the presence of those men. However, the expressions on Yulin's side weren't good. Moyong Kong looked at them and shook his head with a disapproving look. What? When he was puzzled. Clang. Chen Yowen, who was at the entrance of the opening, suddenly appeared in front of Mubong. What amazing speed? Tat. Instinctively, Mubong tried to spread the distance, slash. Quack. Thud, roll. With a short scream, the head of Mubong, which had been decapitated, rolled on the ground. Seol Young Gwi, the elder next to him, was startled at what happened so quickly. Lord Chun. What the hell? Slash. Seol Young Gwi's right arm flew through the air before he could even finish speaking. Seol Young Gwi's expression distorted with pain that came from the slash, and a terrifying scream erupted. Quack. All the warriors of the Ice Palace were shocked as they saw the bloody arm. No way. One elder had his head cut off and the other his right arm cut off. They were both superior masters. Even outside the Ice Palace, the superior masters were treated with respect, but they seemed like kids in front of Chen Yowen. Chen Yowen looked at Seol Young Gwi, who was grunting in pain, and spoke in his usual cold voice. You keep making excuses that don't even make sense. Kuu. Are our positions being changed here? This isn't good. Only then did Dan Jushin, the deputy king of the Ice Palace, understand why the appearance of Moyong Kong and Yulin changed upon the arrival of Chen Yowen. They knew how the lord of the demonic cult would act. Too strong. He could clearly feel it with just one movement. Although Dan Jushin is one of the strongest in the north, this man in front of him was on a completely different level. How can this be? When he was in a moment of shock, the middle-aged man who had his arm cut off waved a bell and yelled, "Ack! He killed that bastard!" Traying. With the sound of a bell, the people in iron masks, who had been waiting in stance with their weapons, rushed for Chen Yowen. Swoosh! Chen Yowen looked at them. They were above the superior master level, but the martial arts they were using weren't that of the Blade God 6 martial clan. Chen Yowen's eyes narrowed as he looked at them. The former lord was also said to be wearing an iron mask. There was a possibility that the former lord of the cult was among them. The easiest way to check would be to battle all of them at once. Chen Yowen, in his armor, went for the people in the iron masks who were rushing at him. Shoo! Clang! 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 When Chen Yowen and the iron masks collided, the entire cave was filled with sounds of clashing. Just the clashing sounds from the swords were enough to shake the entire cave. At that time, Jigul Sohi spoke to Moyong Kong. Leader Moyong. Now is our chance. We need to retreat. They weren't sure what would happen if Chen Yowen turns out to be in a bad mood after the fight. Moyang Kong also nodded as he agreed and spoke to Dan Jishin. Deputy King, as you can see, we need to retreat right now. I know that nothing good will come out of trying to touch Lord Chun's belongings. Dan Jishin's face hardened. It was a shame, but it was an undeniable fact. Dan Jishin quietly ordered his men. Retreat quickly. The warriors all nodded their heads and moved to retreat. The passage created by the dragon was so wide that even if they all moved at once, it wasn't cramped. They were in a hurry to get back onto the surface, but Dan Jishin suddenly stopped and raised his hand. As a result, the Ice Palace and the Yulin warriors stopped. Someone was walking into the dark cave. Moyang Kong, who frowned at that, spoke in a bewildered voice. The Dark King. The one walking in was the great guardian, Mara Kim. Mara Kim drew his sword from the waist. Visor. With the sound of the sword being pulled out of the sheath, he pointed it at the Yulin and the North Sea Ice Palace forces. In the name of our Lord. Overpower everyone who rebels and kill them. Whoa. 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 As soon as his words fell, many white and black flags fluttered in the dark passage behind Mara Kim. Hundreds of swords illuminated in the darkness. Everyone held their breath at the sight of the people emitting immense energy with vicious bloodlust. Clench. Even Moyang Kong and Dan Jishin, who held on to their swords, were scared for their lives. This is the worst. Would this situation go well with the phase of regression and dilemma? The shadow of despair engulfed the warriors of North Sea Ice Palace and the Yulin forces. Chapter 424. Nano Machine Advent. Part 2. Are people aware that when a mouse gets cornered by a cat, the mouse bites the cat? It was the same with Dan Jishin, the deputy king of the palace, who was flustered. In reality, the only person he was afraid of was the lord of the demonic cult, Chun Yuan. Even though the demonic cult was one of the top 3 forces in the Jianghu region, the North Sea Ice Palace was the hegemon of the north, and he was one of the strongest men in the north. They have looked down on me. Dan Jishin's gaze was fixed on one person. Among every warrior, there was only one person who could be his opponent. It was the Dark King, Mara Kim. Leader Moyang. I will deal with the Dark King. Can you deal with one of those 3 over there? At the telepathic message, Moyang Kong looked at one of the 3 Dan Jishin was referring to. A muscular man with a huge beard, it was Ko Wonger, one of the 6 swords. To reach the level of superior master at such a young age. It wasn't just that. It was the same with the hooded young man next to Ko Wonger. Just looking at them, it was clear that both of them were in their mid-20s, but they were both superior masters. Those 2 are fine, but that person is the problem. The person Moyang Kong felt uneasy about was the strong middle-aged man in blue armor. The one he heard of. The swordsman with a high reputation, the man who showed his skills in the battle between the demonic cult and the forces of evil. Those 2 are at the beginning of their bloom, but that man, Mong Mu, will be really difficult to deal with. If he had to deal with someone, he'd rather deal with someone stronger. The 2 superior masters could be handled by the elders of the North Sea Ice Palace. However, if they fought, the demonic cult would consider them as their enemy. Carefully looking at Jigel Sohi, he noticed how she too nodded at the plan. To that, Moyang Kong responded to Dan Jishin's request. Understood. Let's try and solve this problem by working together. Understood. There was only one answer. They all had to end their battles before the lord of the demonic cult dealt with the Blade God's 6 martial clan members. Visor. Do not be afraid. I'll take the lead. Shoo. As Dan Jishin drew his sword, an intense chill spread all around. He was relatively exhausted as he had to deal with the dragon turtle. However, he was a supreme master who could use cold chi. When being compared to the 5 strongest warriors, he wouldn't be pushed too far. Fat. Mara Kim and Dan Jushin, the best on both sides, took the lead. As the two men took the lead, the warriors of both sides advanced in unison. Waya. The cave the dragon had built turned into a battlefield. A fierce fight began to unfold. This can't be compared to the Crown Prince. Dan Jushin's sword had such an intense chill that ice formed whenever his sword passed through the air. Just as Mara Kim was shocked, Dan Jushin couldn't hide his shock. Chew. First, in order to subdue the opponent right away, Dan Jushin used the ice-white god sword. However, Mara Kim dodged the attack despite being very close to getting hit, and suddenly moved behind him to attack. He is called the Wind God. What amazing speed! Before the sword could even touch his back, an ice shield formed around him. He would temporarily achieve a defense better than a shield if he managed to produce more than 6 layers of shield with the ice-white god sword. Cha-cha-cha-cha. The 24 demon swords unfolded by Mara Kim kept breaking down the ice. In the meantime, Dan Jushin unfolded a Lightfoot technique as he twisted his body and aimed for the heart by shifting his sword to his left hand. Weak. Mara Kim did a backwards roll to avoid getting hit. Dan Jushin frowned. He avoided this? He's an annoying one. He always thought he hadn't met a proper opponent ever since he reached the Supreme Master level. However, when he finally met a talented person of the same level as him, it felt like he was nowhere close to being strong. We need to subdue them quickly. As if it was a life and death battle, they were all desperate, all because of Chen Yuan. In the end, Dan Jushin decided to avoid useless battles. 8th level of new body. Anyone who reached the 8th level was known to be a supreme being in the north. Shock. White steam formed around Dan Jushin's body, then frost began to form all over his body. It seemed like anything he touched would turn into ice. Dark King. Let's end this. Dan Jushin's sword created a thick white frost and tried to corner Mara Kim, who moved around freely. Mara Kim judged that it would be hard to keep dodging the attacks when the opponent was going all out, so he raised his internal energy tenfold and unfolded the 24 demon sword again. Cha-cha-cocking. The two people's swords collided in the air, causing sparks. Like their fierce confrontation, Moyong Kong, too, was engaged in a battle with Mong Mu. Although they were experienced leaders in the clan and cult, it was their first time fighting each other. Mong Mu, who had dealt with the masters of the forces of evil head-on, had the upper hand in this confrontation. Haha. Very good. Cha-cha-cocking. He was so excited that he laughed as he fought. I'm excited. Unlike him, who was full of courage, Moyong Kong was impatient. It was the same with Dan Jushin. If they couldn't hurry up and end their battles, they knew how the situation would be overturned, and that scared them. We have the numbers. In terms of warriors, since the Yulin and IC combined their forces, their warriors exceeded 600. The problem is execution. The demonic cult, including the 6 swords and the other warriors, were of the Super Master level and above and in good condition. The only way to win would be to take down their leaders. As predicted, the North Sea Ice Palace elders worked together to subdue Ko Wonger and Hubong. If we can't control them, we will be at a disadvantage. On the battlefield, one should always subdue the higher level ones. As the higher level ones are the first to attack the enemy and move back, they must be taken down. Ugh, if my arm was still intact, I wouldn't have struggled this much against a kid. Elder Seol Young Gwi was facing Ko Wonger. He lost one arm, and because of that, he lost a great deal of balance. Originally, he could have overpowered the kid, but the balance in his movements was broken, leading to an equal level confrontation. If this person wasn't hurt, I would have been pushed back. Ko Wonger could feel that. Seol Young Gwi's martial arts skills were very detailed, despite having to use only one arm. If his other arm wasn't cut, Ko Wonger would have been in danger. Geez. I blocked it with my energy, but the cold chi penetrated my body. It was his first time competing with a master who used cold chi, which made it even more difficult for him to fight. He had to subdue his opponent while maintaining a minimum distance with the opponent. We need to show them that we can subdue them with our own strength even if the Lord doesn't intervene. Just as the Ice Palace and Yulin thought about escaping, the warriors of the demonic cult were fighting with a sense of duty to show their lord how strong they have become. No one was fighting without reason. From the beginning, the battlefield inside the cave became more and more intense. Meanwhile, what kind of monster is he? The middle-aged man who got his arm cut off wasn't able to hide his embarrassment. He couldn't tell if he was really seeing a monster or imagining it. Quack. When Chen Yuan's hand in the nano suit touched their head, the warrior with the iron mask died. 5 of the Iron Mask warriors had already died from getting their heads snapped. He had never met such an opponent. The same thing kept happening over and over again, and Chen Yuan didn't seem like he was exerting any power. Cha-chong. Not you. Qua. Quack. Quack. After checking the sword skills of each man in the mask, Chen Yuan would kill them without hesitation. It was as if he was doing a verification process. Of course, not everyone in the Iron Mask were weak. Bang! The internal energy which stretched out from the fist of a master in an iron mask struck the back of Chen Yuan, who was dealing with 3 people at the same time. Whoa! Along with the sound of something getting blasted, the fist didn't even touch his back before the energy scattered. No, how can energy scatter? What the hell is that armor? The middle-aged man was shocked as he saw the nano suit block the energy. Even if the attack got dispersed, the fact that Chen Yuan didn't even budge made it even more shocking. Dispersed the impact of the concentrated energy attack. Nice. Chen Yuan responded to Nano. The gadolinium metal could absorb and withstand a tremendous amount of energy, even the lightning chi of the dragon turtle. If the suit could handle that much, a simple attack wouldn't even scratch him. Kook. Perhaps resentful that his attack was blocked, the master in the iron mask tried to use the same attack again. There was no way Chen Yuan would leave it alone. When Chen Yuan stretched out his hand towards the iron-masked master, a black flame sword appeared in the air and clashed with him. Cha! Tatak! As a master who seemed to be above master level, the one in the iron mask bounced backwards. Fat! As he flew quite a distance back, the master in the iron mask ended up getting between the Yulin and the demonic cult's battles. Ugh! Moyang Kong was shocked when he saw that someone had suddenly interrupted their fight and backed away. The ones in the iron mask were all superior masters, and there was no way Moyang Kong could charge them recklessly. Chow! Crack! The iron mask split in half and fell to the floor. He flew backwards because of the impact, but he was unable to avoid the attack from the black flame sword. But when his face was revealed, Moyang Kong was shocked. This can't be. Blood was dripping from his messy white hair and his face full of wrinkles, but when he saw the 6 seals on his forehead, Moyang Kong knew who he was. Saint Guyong. The old man's identity hidden behind the iron mask was Saint Guyong, the former head of the Shaolin Temple. He was a famous saint who disappeared 18 years ago. Moyang Kong, who had been in Yulin for a long time, recognized the man's face because he had a close relationship with Saint Guyong. Saint! How could you side with the Blade God 6 Marshal, huh? Swoosh! He approached the man and tried to talk with him, but Moyang Kong suddenly increased the distance as the man unfolded the Shaolin Dragon Tide with his hands. Why is he attacking me? Saint Guyong was a good-natured person. He was a man who devoted himself to justice and stayed humble despite having outstanding martial arts skills equivalent to the 5 strongest warriors, and he learned half of the 72 rites of Shaolin. It was shocking to see such a man attack him. "Saint. What is this? Do you not remember me? Moyang." He kept announcing himself, thinking that the man would recognize him, but the saint kept looking at Moyang Kong with blank eyes as if he knew nothing. There was no light in his eyes. It was strange, as if the man had no emotions or thoughts running through his mind. Moyang Kong didn't like what he was seeing, as he saw the saint gather energy into his fists once again, and then Saint Guyong flew to the place where the lord of the demonic cult was. Saint. It seemed like the man only had thoughts about Chen Yuan. What the hell happened to Saint Guyong to act like this and follow the Blade God 6 martial clan? However, apart from Moyang Kong, who was shocked, there were many people equally shocked. No way. That is the 14th Plum Blossom sword. No. That one. That master in the Iron Mask is using the Fortune sword. He is using the Wudong clan sword? Shockingly, among the masters in the Iron Masks, some belonged to the 9 great clans. Moreover, their movement was so refined that it was definite that they all were the top seat in their factions. The Sword of 4 Kings. Even in the forces of evil, there weren't many who used the Sword of 4 Kings. The problem was that very few people practiced such martial arts, and only the direct descendants of the clan were taught it. There was no way any of the great clans would teach or let outsiders steal their martial arts. What the hell does this mean? Chapter 425. Nano Machine Advent. Part 3. The martial arts users in the Iron Masks used the martial arts of prestigious academies and clans, yet their identities were unknown. Their presence shocked the warriors of Yulin. There was only one thing they all guessed. Is it possible that they all lost their way? Moyan Yan, who saw the face of Saint Guyong from the cracked Iron Mask, speculated the same thing as the others. But even if they guessed, there was no way for them to prove it or get answers. Dealing with the warriors of the demonic cult was daunting, and now they had to break through at all costs. Quack. However, they soon fell into serious trouble. Half of the iron-masked warriors had already been killed by Chen Yuan. Even if the great clan's techniques were being used, the result didn't change. No one in the Iron Masks could use more than 3 strikes. That man is not human. We need to find the warriors and move. If things kept going like this, it would be the worst outcome for everyone. There was a conspiracy plotted by the Blade God 6 martial clan, and instead of digging into the depths of the plot, they would get annihilated since Yulin took out their weapons towards the demonic cult they had formed an alliance with. This isn't it. This has to be stopped right away. Moyang Yan stopped fighting and hurriedly headed towards Moyang Kong. On the other hand, the middle-aged man of the Blade God 6 martial clan, Biak Lu, was looking into the cave in shock. He stuck his tongue out as he thought. How was he able to fight against the Spirit Squad? Spirit Squad. A combat unit that had been built after a painstakingly long time in the Blade God 6 martial clan. They were created for the sole purpose of battle, and the squad was completed after 10 years of gathering famous masters of Jianghu. The demon god, it's impossible. They never dreamed that the lord of the demonic cult would come to the north. If he hadn't come, the Blade God 6 martial clan would have been able to annihilate the North Sea Ice Palace warriors with just 20 members of the Spirit Squad. He should have listened to the Blade Lord, who only asked them to get the core and withdraw. It was only a matter of time before they all get annihilated by Chen Yuan. He didn't know if any of them were from the demonic cult, but till now, Chen Yuan killed every one of the Iron Masked masters without hesitation. Please, I hope it's done. Ta-ta-ta-tack. After running for a while, Biak Lu reached the end of the cave. An amazing sight was at the end. There was the shell of a giant turtle, the size of a small mountain, and more heinous and bigger than the 3 heads of the dragon was one head, which was lying on the floor. The corpse of the dragon, which was trying to escape. Spark. A strong lightning shock surged upwards from the top of the dragon's shell, which looked like a mountain. Only the middle part of the shell had been opened, and something unusual seemed to be happening outside. Everything seemed to be filled with sparks. Near the dragon, the slaughter blade master was moving, dismantling the parts of the dragon. Bayok Lu. Then a middle-aged man with a goatee approached Bayok Lu, who was running. He was Wu Jincheng, one of the 6 martial masters. He asked Bayok Lu, who lost one arm, "How come you are here alone? Don't tell me, you got into trouble with Yulin and the North Sea Ice Palace?" As if that could happen. After responding sharply, Bayok Lu glared at another middle-aged man in white fur. He was Wan Sang-ho, the 6th elder of the Ice Palace. However, his true identity was Wan Sang-ho, one of the masters of the Blade God's 6 martial clan, who was sent to the north as a spy many years ago. "What were you doing all this while, Master?" Bayok Lu shouted at Wan Sang-ho, who was puzzled. "That damn Chen Yuan, he is supposed to be recovering from the hit he took from the dragon, so how did he appear down here?" What? No way. I saw it with my own 2 eyes, and saw that the lord of the demonic cult was in trouble. He was hit by the lightning of the 3 dragon heads at the same time. How can he be fine? Only after confirming that, Wan Sang-ho informed the other people. Believing that, they all went into the process of dismantling the dragon and fighting the Yulin. In the hands of that demon, more than half of them are dead. Can you come up with an excuse for what happened? Just look at that scene. Kaka. As his arm went numb, Bayok Lu touched the cloth pressing on his wound. Wu Jincheng, who recognized the seriousness of the news that half of the spirit squad was dead, spoke. "It looks like it will be impossible for the squad to take down the demon." Initially, the purpose of the spirit squad was predetermined. It was to eliminate the remaining power of the Yulin and Ice Palace. "Slaughter Blade Master?" Bayok Lu asked, while looking at the sparks flashing from the dragon's shell. To that, Wu Jincheng shook his head and answered, "Not yet." "Huh, this can't be." Bayok Lu sighed. The Slaughter Blade Master was a greedy person, enough to covet the core of the spirit beast for himself. He was rejecting the request to retreat or get reinforcements for the sake of obtaining the core. If it wasn't for the warriors he brought along, he would never be able to break the body of the dragon. If only the Blade Lord found out that one of the 6 martial masters was hiding his ambition, Bayok Lu wondered how he would react. Even if he really absorbs the core, facing Chen Yuan would still be impossible. I can't understand what that man is thinking. Is he planning on using the demon god as an excuse? Rather, they were supposed to be thinking about how they're going to get out of the hands of the demon. Bayok Lu asked what he was originally going to ask. Are the adjustments finished? At those words, Wu Jincheng answered with a look of relief. Fortunately, it has been completed. That's good. Hurry before the demon gets here. Before Bayok Lu could finish speaking, a pounding sound entered their ears. Swoosh! At the familiar sound, his face went stiff. Damn it! Bayok Lu turned back into the cave and looked at it with intense eyes. Something flashed in the dark, white eyes seemed to approach them with great speed. What is that? Wu Jincheng, the Blade Master, who knew nothing about it, asked Bayok Lu. Demon God. What? Now isn't the time to discuss it. The enemy is approaching us. Stop what you're doing and get into formation. Yes. Visor. Visor. RRRNG. At Bayok Lu's cry, the people who were busy dismantling the dragon stopped what they were doing and pulled out their swords from their waists in perfect harmony. Eventually, the creature flying through the air emitting white light arrived at where the dragon's corpse was. Swoosh! Clang! Chun Yo-won, in the black nano suit, knelt on one knee as he landed on the ground from a great height. A thrilling scene for those who saw it. Tension was visible in the eyes of those who belonged to the Slaughter Blade Master's unit. Swoosh! The helmet of the armor scattered away, revealing his face. Long hair, white face, and sharp eyes. Undoubtedly, the demon god. Nano. If we land like this, we will end up getting attacked. Because it flies using a magnetic field, Chun Yo-won left the landing to Nano. Fortunately, the opponents were all too tense to move when they saw Chun Yo-won. Nano said something incomprehensible. The Nano suit's flight landing is a widely used superhero landing. It is used for suppression of energy. It isn't bad to land on my knees before regaining my balance. But don't. Understood. Chun Yo-won shook his head as he got up from one knee. Despite the presence of more than 100 people, everything was silent. Such overwhelming power he held. No matter how large the number was, not a single person moved to attack. Blade God 6 Martial Clan. There is no place for you guys to go. Chun Yo-won was making fun of them. The demonic cult, Yulin and Ice Palace were all on the other side. Glancing at the dragon's shell, Chun Yo-won spoke to them. If you aim for someone else's thing, you always have to pay a price. Coo! Intense energy began to emanate from his body, along with tremendous fear rising in the opponents. There was no way that they could withstand the energy from someone who was in Divine Master level. Monster. The Slaughter Blade Master's people lost their fighting spirit before even clashing swords with Chun Yo-won until Byok-lu hurriedly shouted. Demon God. Will you really be able to act like this against us? Huh? Byok-lu took a bell and shook it. Thud. 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 Someone slowly walked out of one corner of the cave. The one coming in was wearing the same iron mask as those who fought Chun Yo-won in the entrance. If anything, this one's energy seemed a lot messier. His clothes were almost at the level of rags, and entire body was covered in marks. Traying. Take off your mask. At Byok-lu's ring and command, the man in the iron mask took it off. The face of an old man with gray hair, white eyebrows, and a long white beard. As he saw the face and body full of scars, Chun Yo-won's face hardened. No way. Even if he never saw the face, maybe it was because he shared the same blood? Chun Yo-won could instinctively sense who the old man was. Kahahahaha. I guess you recognize him. Your grandfather, Chun In-ji. The identity of the man whose eyes looked dead. The former lord of the demonic cult, Chun In-ji. He was the one who handed Baekhyun his identity slate. Thank God. The adjustment was done on time. Byok-lu felt relieved. Looking at Chun Yo-won's reaction, his plan worked. I didn't bring this man to use him this way, but it turned out to be helpful. I have no idea how he managed to survive, but I am really lucky. Cuckoo. They entered the frozen ice cave where the dragon had been sealed, and they found the former lord, Chun In-ji, freezing to death. They managed to get a report on what happened inside the cave and found out about how he escaped. They talked to him about the medication they bought and used it on him. And they succeeded just in time. Even if he is a merciless demon god, can he really kill his own blood and flesh? Even great masters showed weakness in front of their own blood. This spirit member was strong in action, and they were created for only one reason. Feeling glad, Byok-lu exclaimed. Demon god. I am warning you. If you try to resist a single attack from him, your grandfather's head will burst, and he'll die. Chun Yo-won's eyebrows rose at Byok-lu's warning. He was the one who received the report from Baekhyun, and he had doubts on why Chen Enji was wearing a mask and sided with the Blade God's 6 martial clan. But it turned out that there was no siding. Is this the reason why they managed to find out that there was the sword technique of their clan in the academy? The most curious secret had been unfolded. Except for the guardians and Chen Yuan, the only one who knew about the hidden treasure was Chen Enji, the one who gave up his position 20 years ago. Give him a sword. At Bayok Lu's order, one of the members threw a sword. Clang! Chen Enji, who received it, pulled the sword up with an indifferent look. And that wasn't all. The warriors looked at Bayok Lu, waiting for orders to fall. Release sword chi. Whoa! 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 Once the order fell, energy was emitted from the swords of 100 warriors. The warriors under the Slaughter Sword Master were all superior masters and skilled. With a smile, Bayok Lu warned. Move even a little, and it's all over for you. He was a thorough man. In addition to the members of the Slaughter Squad, there were 4 Blade Masters, and a blue chi was radiating from all their swords, ready to attack. Train! With that sword, you will kill your grandson, the demon god, no. The strongest man in demonic cult right now. At that command, Chen Yuan's eyes turned cold. Ha ha ha. Bloody person. On the other hand, Bayok Lu's mouth raised wickedly. He couldn't hide the satisfaction that he cornered Chen Yuan, the greatest enemy of their clan, with his own hands. If he could kill Chen Yuan, the Blade Lord would recognize his effort. If he did well, maybe he would have a chance to surpass everyone and rise to a new level. Tremble! Tremble! However, Chen Enji, who seemed dead in the eyes, had convulsions all over his body and refused to obey commands. As soon as the bell rang, one was bound to obey orders. How the hell is he rejecting a command from the technique that has been perfected after 10 years? Bayok Lu frowned. Even if his body refuses, the worm in his head will force him to move. The bell in his hand rang twice. Train! Train! Kill your grandson! Chen Enji, who refused the command, slowly moved as the veins on his forehead stood up. Wong! A blue hue on his sword. He, who unfolded a sword technique, was aiming his sword at Chen Yuan. And the sword technique was Sky Demon Sword. The strongest sword which former Lord Chen Enji could unfold. There were only 2 people who learned it, Chen Enji and the 2nd generation Chen Ma. Chow 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 chow. 24 types of swords seemed like they were exquisitely rushing for Chen Yuan, who didn't move. The power of the Sky Demon Sword, which is known to be the strongest in the demonic cult. Chow chow chow. The energy spread in all directions as the sword kept on unfolding. The sword was strong enough to crack the floor below. Looking at how Chen Yuan didn't even move a muscle, the masters of the Blade God's 6 martial clan and Bayok Lu were joyful. Chow 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 chow. A flashy sword pierced Chen Yuan's body in an instant. At that moment, an amazing thing happened. SRRR. As soon as the sword pierced him, Chen Yuan's body turned into an afterimage and scattered. Illusion? That bastard. I warned him not to move. Bayok Lu, realizing that Chen Yuan avoided the sword, rang the bell 3 times. Train! 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 If the bell is shaken 3 times with a certain injection of energy, it will self-destruct the brain, and the spirit squad member will kill himself. Clench! At that very moment, Chen Yuan grabbed the head of the former lord, Chen Enji. Wu Jinchang, who realized that Chen Yuan was up to something, shouted at the warriors. Attack now! Chow 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 chow. As soon as orders fell, 100 sword chis flew towards Chen Yuan. Quack 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 wang. In the aftermath of numerous sword chis flying towards him, dust rose everywhere. Without stepping back, the men began to attack Chen Yuan from a distance with the help of sword chi. Chow 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 chow. After attacking for a while, Wu Jinchong felt a subtle energy. It didn't feel like the qi had cut something down. Rather, it was as if the qi was stuck in something. Then came the sound of a deafening scream. Crackle. Quack. Biak Lu looked at the dust, which gathered with a puzzled expression as if the sound of someone being electrocuted was heard. Frustrated, he waved his hand towards the dust. The wind created by the internal energy calmed the dust, which was obscuring their vision. Crackle. 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 The moment he saw it, his eyes trembled. No. Around Chen Youan, a large circular shield covered with lightning and sparks was protecting him. Lightning Qi? How? What was even more absurd was that the former Lord Chen Inji, whose head should have exploded, fainted. Seeing that his body twitched, he didn't die. No way. The order wasn't triggered. How could this happen? Once activated, the host's brain had to explode. At least, if not explode, the brain is supposed to burn. It can only be cancelled by killing the worm inside the head, which is impossible. Chen Youan brushed his long hair aside as he sighed. Phew. 5% of energy consumed. Removing shield. Crackle. Nano's voice resounded, and the protective shield disappeared right away. When the shield disappeared, Chen Youan spoke with a cold voice, which bewildered everyone in the place. Kill your grandson? Huh. Crackle. As soon as he said that, cold energy engulfed the entire cave. The soldiers looked around as the yin energy exuded by Chen Youan made it hard for them to breathe. Oh, my God. How can? The reason was, an uncountable number of ice swords filled the space. At first glance, it seemed like there were hundreds of them. Creepy. A chill ran down their spines. Their eyes, which knew that they were pushed into the corner by the demon god, trembled in fear and terror, losing their will to fight. Biak Lu mumbled, with a pale face. Why you, how? Chen Youan sentenced everyone to death. Everyone, die. Swoosh. As soon as the words were finished, the ice sword filling the space ran towards the warriors as if they were waiting for the order. Chow 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 chow.